Apparently, NFL cheerleaders don't make that much. Just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I like it.
There isn't like a cheat code to that. So get over yourself. All right, you go.
Soup.
What?
What percentage of your clients struggle with student loans?
How do you define struggle?
So, a couple weeks ago, I was at an Ivy League school.
Uh-huh.
And when I was there, up in the Northeast, I learned that student tuition every year, these kids are paying $90,000.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now look, whether that's expensive, not expensive, that's for y'all to decide, you listeners. But for me, I remember one of the evenings I was like, hey, is there a karaoke bar around? And one of the faculty there was like, karaoke bar? These kids are studying.
Yeah.
Like, they might go to some bar that's for other students only and their program, whatever else, but that's it. I mean, and they're talking, and sure enough, when you walk by any of them, what are they talking about? Homework.
School? Yeah.
What the professors talked about, what they're learning, and there's so much pressure. Interesting other side note, like some of these schools have the highest suicide rates for students, but that's its own point. That's a different conversation. Yeah. Lots of pressure, and a lot of these kids are focused on what's coming next. And I was thinking about that. If you're here for 4 years, $360,000, not including whatever interest rate you got, trying to get that thing paid in 10 years. When it's all said and done, now if you're a drama student, I have no idea what your path to success looks like. Like, good luck, right? But if you're a business student, and again, a lot of these folks have these schools have amazing programs for law, and there's more of a defined path. But if you're in business, hopefully you get a great internship afterwards. Probably doesn't pay great, but it got you the job because you're in this community with these people. But you have to have community, right? Like, when you get done, I would assume you've basically got to live with a group of people for 4 or 5 years until you can somewhat get another place to live, where you're spending the next 4 to 5 years throwing.
You started in a hole.
Yeah, you started life in this huge hole that if everything goes well, like, don't focus on marriage, don't focus on anything else. Get your stuff paid off. I have a friend who went to a private school in Philly, LaSalle, and he was dating one of the Eagles cheerleaders, and she was in her 3rd year there, and she's like, yeah, I got $225,000 in debt. Apparently, NFL cheerleaders don't make that much. She's like, I'm going to be in this debt until I die.
Like, how much incremental income do you have to make for that to become some sort of net positive ROI on your $90,000 a year of school?
Yeah. Well, you went to UT Austin.
Uh-huh.
I desperately wanted to go to UT Austin when I was in high school. My whole family's from Texas. I wanted to go. My mom, who built CFP programs, like, son, you're ridiculous. Look at these out-of-state tuitions. UT would love to have you. Yeah. Turns out, universities like Wisconsin, they're more apt to bringing in students from out of state than in-state because there's so much more money. So they're like, yeah, UT Austin would love to have you go.
Of course.
It's like $125 a year.
Yeah.
Ridiculous out-of-state tuition.
I had the cheapest college expense ever, and I didn't like it. It's funny what you think about when you're 18. Let me just say that letting somebody take out a $90,000 loan every year, $360,000, who has no income, that is the society that we operate in. That's what we set people up for. They don't even have context for the decisions they're making, but we're okay with that. Can I get a mortgage? Can I get a business loan? No, but you can spend $300,000 on your education that may or may not actually be useful. Different discussion. But my college education. So I played golf for 1 year. I was on half a scholarship at Sam Houston State University. Quit the golf team after a year. Went to UT. Right, in-state tuition. I graduated after a total of 3 years. So I spent 2 years at UT and I graduated. I spent 60 hours at UT. You have to get 120 hours to get a degree. I had 60 credit hours at UT. That's the minimum number of hours required to get a degree that says the University of Texas on it. half of my hours were there. Everything else was either, on scholarship at Sam Houston, college credits from high school or AP or whatever, and like literally community college online. That was it.
Yeah.
That's how I got through everything. And I spent one less year. So I had one less year to feed myself before I started making money. It's not like I was sitting there reconciling going, oh, well, I could spend $100,000 a year, or I could spend this. And here's the long-term consequences of that. Like I had no concept of money when I was 19.
Yeah.
Like I was like, can I afford $4.32 to go to Wendy's? That was pretty much the extent of my thinking. But I will tell you this, having gone through, like, I probably visited 20 colleges in high school. I wanted to play golf. I went to all these schools, and I saw the range of completely different experiences. I visited the University of Texas, visited the golf program, talked to the coaches, went through the whole thing. I visited Yale and Columbia. There are no athletic scholarships in the Ivy League. And virtually everybody, their tuition is entirely determined by their parents' household income. That is almost exclusively how it works. And so if your parents make less than $50,000, your tuition's free. It doesn't matter. You don't get an athletic scholarship for anything. And if you make over X, you're paying rack rate. So it's interesting in one sense, because the only people who are actually getting $90,000 a year in debt come from a family that have met some income threshold. If this tells you anything about the state of financial education, they come from some income threshold. I don't know if I actually literally don't know the number. You can probably Google it, right? So the only people who are getting into that debt came from a place of, let's say, relative privilege. I don't know what to make of that. That is kind of interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting. And I would question what percentage of those students that walk away had their parents take care of their education versus the grind that I was talking about a second ago, where I do think a lot, I would say a majority of students fall into in the United States when it comes to student loans and getting them paid, like they themselves are paying it off. What I think is interesting, though, is in this last year, everyone was talking about Joe Biden and his initiative to try to get this last just $10,000 paid of everyone's student loans. Now, it's interesting. For me, my take's always been, it's not the government's responsibility to take care of my degree. I took out this loan. Now, that to be said, when the CARES Act and everything, they nixed interest rates. You better believe I think I had like $70,000 in student loans. I threw everything at those for like those 2 years. Now I sat on that last $10,000.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the government's responsibility, but I'm not touching it if you're just going to pay it. So I'll wait, So I'll contribute to the problem a little bit here. But anyway, so of course it doesn't get paid. Sure, they say it's coming back. Your interest rates are coming back, so we take care of the rest. But in that time, I saw a lot of, it's all part of the reason why I don't have Facebook anymore. I saw a lot of people post, I don't deserve this. It wasn't my fault. I didn't know. I was being taken advantage of.
I didn't know.
Someone should step in and take care of this. Now, my take is, too bad, so sad. Here's your communications degree, your $40,000 student loans. No, you owe that. Now, whether there's another problem at play, should the universities be promising a brighter future?
That's a reasonable question. Yeah.
A drama degree.
Should they be promising a reasonable future? Because what am I getting for that?
Yeah.
See, my perspective on the whole, it's not my fault I didn't know, right? That generally I hear that, and that sounds like somebody who wants the state to take care of them. There's no personal responsibility in my household. Whatever the status quo is just what it is. And if I have to search hard to find an answer for something, then it wasn't my fault, right? So by that logic, then the reality is, I think these are things that have to be taught in public school. If you're coming out of a public school, And the next decision you're going to make in life is to spend 10,000 or 50, it doesn't even matter. You're 18 years old, you've never spent that much money in your life, but that's going to be the next decision. The logical extension of high school is to go to college. That's what it is today. That is the logical extension of high school. And you are spending no time preparing people for the practical realities of what it's like to be a college student. And all of a sudden you have to make decisions for yourself. And you have to choose, and you don't have to go to college, by the way.
Yep.
There's a million things that you can choose to do with your time. There's a bunch of productive people who never finished college, never started college, right?
Yep.
But if you're coming out of the system saying, I didn't know, then maybe it's the system's fault. Okay, I understand that perspective. Whether or not that's the correct answer, I don't know. But that kind of seems like what they're saying.
I've interviewed 2 people, getting ready to interview a couple more, where these people run companies where the sole objective, like their mission, is to take care of the student loan crisis.
Well, it's a whole business.
What's that?
It's a whole business now.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. People come in, help take care of you. All right, now, great. Awesome. Like, if that's the thing. But it's interesting to me that even is a business. And so my question, I actually don't think that's the answer. But I'd love your take. Is loan forgiveness the solution to this student loan debt crisis? And what are your thoughts around that?
No, the reality is it's a Band-Aid, because if you're going to do that, the only way that you actually solve this problem is if you fix it at its core, which is if you just forgive student loans today, have you done anything to fix the issue that created them in the first place? And we can argue all day about what is the issue. Is the issue that I didn't know? Maybe it is, because the reality is people's perspective is their own reality. Okay? So at some level, that kind of is an issue, actually. I didn't know. Is college too expensive? Maybe. So there's any number of things that probably go into these student loans. I mean, how many people are taking out student loans so they can live in luxury apartments because they saw them on Instagram, right? That's probably some of it. It seems like every generation that keeps going, oh, my parents had this, and my parents said they had this, I walked uphill to school both ways in the snow, kind of thing. And like every generation just seems to get softer and softer
Bougie.
and softer and bougier. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you.
Yeah,
and if you don't fix that, people will just continue. If you enable people to make those decisions, you know how much credit card debt existed before credit cards? None. And they threw you in debtor's prison. But now you can do it. So.
And you know what's funny about that too is credit card companies just love to present themselves and set up little booths at college campuses. So that's another situation where are we taking advantage of the youth who don't understand how money works and how interest rates work. Yeah. And, you're going to have to pay this off sooner or later. And yeah, I mean, at one point in time when I was in college, I know I struggled. It wasn't like it was a really bad situation, but I remember I had like 4 or 5 credit cards because of the offers that came around, and it was encouraged too. And then at some point, like different things happen and you need to get your card taken care of and whatever else. And now all of a sudden you're in this situation where you're like, shit, I'm in credit card debt. I owe $15,000 this month and I make like $1,000 a month. How are, like that kind of, oh crap moment. And that was the moment for me that I realized like, okay, I got to take this seriously. It wasn't bad enough that
I got to take ownership
figure it
of
out, but it was like, oh, if I'm not like watching this, I'm not proactive in my own finances. Like these systems that are set in place aren't here to help you.
Yeah. I think that's an important point. Are these people, does anybody there actually have your best interest, or they just want to enable you to make the next decision and enable you to make the next decision? And then at some point you won't be able to make the decision you want to.
Yeah.
because you just kept getting enabled along the way. And it's like the line just keeps moving and moving and moving and moving.
Yeah. And go ahead and try to sue Chase Bank and say it wasn't my fault. Right.
Oh yeah.
And to which
I
they'll
didn't
say,
know.
no, you made those purchasing decisions. It's not our fault
Yeah.
that you defaulted. Right? It's not our fault you had to file for bankruptcy. It's not our fault. And so, like, you're not going to go very far with that. The reality is, you have to be accountable. You have to, and that's a whole thing now. And that's a whole other thing that's being developed is financial literacy, financial education, which I think that's a little bit overdone right now in of itself. Oh, so there's a guest on Joe Rogan who came on that said, like, student loan repayment, what Bernie Sanders is proposing, all this stuff. Like, you just said it. It's a Band-Aid. That's not the fix. At Yale, we saw this report that there are more faculty and people on staff that just work at Yale than there are students.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes sense.
Think about that. So there's so much administrative fat at these schools. And if we were, to step in and the government were to say, okay, you have to meet A, B, C, D requirements to receive any sort of federal reimbursement. Now you'd see a bunch of these universities go up in arms, but also how many of these universities have folks with, any sort of economics background?
Yeah.
Whatever, right? There's always there's these people we love that work at these universities, but how many of them are actually important to keeping the thing moving? And how much of it is
depends on what their objective is, right? Like at some point, what these things become are just glorified hedge funds, right? So I just want to produce people who are going to make sure that we have inflows, net inflows.
What is a hedge fund?
They're endowment funds. So it's their bucket of money, right? All of these universities have these huge endowments, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And they use this bucket of money to perpetually support whatever the university really says or wants. It's the reality. And all that they're trying to do is produce people who are going to make income that give them more money. The more money the university has, the more power they have. The more power they have, the more things they can do that you and I don't know about.
What's interesting too? I know of some folks who've gotten PhDs in economics from the University of Texas Tech or Texas Tech University, whatever. And great school, great program, all that. And they told me, when it's all said and done, they give everyone the opportunity to sign up for this pledge. I think it's like a minimum of like $10,000 that you're going to give back to the school. And then what you get is you get your name on the website and some whatever signage. I don't know what all you get out of it, but I guess some more notoriety. And that kind of blew my mind. I'm like, hold on, you finished the program and then, oh, hey, here's this opportunity for an honor you can receive. Just give us more money. I'm like, wow, this is just, it's a system here. Like I remember I have an associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree. And by the end of it, I was like, yeah, I've got good community. I learned all of these different skills. I did really well in accounting. A's all throughout. If you sat me down right now and I had to do any of those homework assignments, I couldn't do them for you. That was years ago. I learned Microsoft Excel really well. And so I guess what I'm questioning is as we were talking about at the beginning, is the value even there?
Do we even learn the right things? That's my question.
Are we learning the right things when we're going through these universities? A lot of my friends in college were athletes. And so I knew people from Africa and Europe and people who were playing soccer, and their mindset a lot of them coming from poverty were like, well, one, I'm not going to waste this opportunity. But I know some of them that like when college, like they kind of like paused college, stopped soccer or whatever else. And they went and started businesses. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, I realized all of this education is just a waste. So I'm starting this business so I can have my education apply to something that I'm actively doing.
Yeah.
So it sticks with me. And I was like, wow, maybe that's the right way to go about it. And then afterwards I asked like, how much of that was like, and they're like, well, actually like 30% of that was actually relevant. The rest of it
Well,
was
when you
just a
think
waste of
about it,
time.
right? So you've started a business. What's the most practical skill that you've had to apply to actually start that business?
I mean, I would think through, it would probably be just anything that catered towards the operations side of my business that I kind of have to run these days, where even like something as simple as knowing how to use Microsoft Excel, which is kind of crazy that that's even like, that's a valuable thing that I got out of that. But sure enough, like just being able to look at that, easily understand, okay, here's a balance sheet, here's an income statement, understanding cash flows, those
You
kinds
could
of
even
things.
distill it probably even simpler than that, right? And just say, at some level, the thing that made me start a business and be at least somewhat successful, where I could keep doing it, was self-belief. Did I learn that in class? Maybe. But like, so did
See, I
everybody
think I
else,
would have
because
had
nobody
that
fails.
without that. I'm a
Right.
cocky son of a gun, man. I think I would have had that without the degrees.
Yeah. See, maybe you get a little more refined in school. Okay, now I know what I know, kind of thing. Here's what happens for everybody who like starts a business. Okay, you start doing media production or doing whatever the heck you're doing, and you at some level you like find somebody who you admire or you idolize, or you determine that they've made it in some capacity, and then you have this moment where you go, wait, I can do it better than that person. Right?
Yeah.
And then you start to go, maybe I should. Maybe I should. Did anybody in my computer science class tell me that? Or my media production class tell me that I should? Maybe my teacher did if they were good, but they were going off script if they did.
Yeah.
They were.
Well, and here's the thing, when it comes to like practical things I've learned, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, like, I'm not going to down my education and say it was a waste of time. Like, I got a lot of great stuff out of it. But a lot of the practical things that I use every day came from YouTube. And little quick videos here or there that immediately applied to whatever my immediate need was. I was training someone this week, and he's like, I'm learning all these new softwares right now, and it's really challenging because I'm doing this and this and this. And I'm like, when do you think you're going to learn these pieces of software you need to do your job? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, when there isn't a need, why would you learn it?
Yeah.
He's like,
wow.
Huh. And I'm like, I understand it's challenging and it's hard to learn something when you're stressed. I totally get that. But on the flip side, if you're not being pushed to learn this new thing, why would you ever learn it? You're probably going to do something else. People love to go the path of least resistance. I do. Everyone does.
Oh yeah. How many times do you hear people go to a job interview? They do great, check all the boxes, and they go, yeah, so what's the job pay? Well, it's this. Okay. And they just accept it.
Yep.
As if that's the truth. As opposed to, oh, now I understand the job and the problem that you're trying to solve and the context in which it's trying to be done. Here's my price to do that. How much would the world operate differently if people actually took that mindset and kind of applied it to everything? Instead of simply accepting things as they are. Hey, I have some level of agency in my life. People don't realize that, I feel like.
Well, and to have agency in your life, typically there has to be some level of, right? There's usually some level of income to it. Most people, and I mean, that's its own podcast as well. Most people don't just get to wake up and look at their calendar and dictate, I don't want to do this today. I'll do this and this and this today. Lots of folks like if I, even myself, like running, like if you're a business owner, I can't just wake up and just be like,
right.
I'd rather play basketball today than go to these meetings, right? I mean, I could, but the repercussions are like, oh, well, then all these people are mad at you. You probably lose business and this and that. So, maybe one day, I know there was an RA I worked for where, when at Carson, we always said, find your freedom. And the former CEO now, Ron Carson, was able to do that. And kudos to him because he built this huge RA, very successful business where if he said, I don't want to go this and do this. Yeah, he could get on his private jet, go somewhere else. I don't like this sound in Vegas. I'm going to go here. Right?
Yeah,
he
but I think
was able to do
smaller.
that. But there was a certain level of, no,
you have to start in smaller bites, though. You have to start in smaller bites.
Hmm.
I used to work in a restaurant. We doing like some hourly job, whatever. I don't even really remember what my job was. And when you're in that type of position, the first thing you have to do is, okay, what are the problems that nobody's asking me to solve? And just go identify them. Just go identify them. Hey, your process to make the cold brew is like really shitty, man. Maybe you should do this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You don't even have to do anything about it. Hey, I saw this. Oh, cool. Hey, I think we should do this.
Man,
Hey,
that's
is it
such
cool if I
helpful
do this?
advice. That is so helpful. So like,
and all of a sudden you start to gain agency because you're just stepping up the scale of what you're doing.
yep.
You're no longer simply just trading your time to hit some buttons, but all of a sudden it's, oh, I'm going to solve some problems that's going to create capacity for somebody else. And all of a sudden they're going to think that I'm useful in a certain way. So maybe they'll ask me to solve some other problems that I didn't even get a chance to see because they knew that I knew how to find solutions. Now it takes a little while and you have to have somebody who's in a position of agency over you that actually values that and sees that. It helps when you work for a business that makes money. I will say that.
Yep.
I've seen some really shitty businesses that don't make any money, and there's many reasons why, but mostly it's because people at the top don't understand other people are trying to help them solve problems. So it helps when the business makes money. But that's how you start with it. 100%. 100%.
I think that's such helpful advice, and not just thinking through like the lens of the restaurant analogy that you were just like providing. There are so many folks who, like myself, I started college at 15. I didn't go to high school. I don't have a diploma. I have 3 degrees. I didn't have credit hours in the state of Nebraska to say, yep, after 20 credit hours, you don't need a diploma. So I started college at 15. But I went to like 7 different colleges.
Yeah.
Where my degree actually is from Doane. And you talked about that earlier. You went to a couple, community colleges and that. I'm like, dude, yeah, I feel you. I think I went to like 9 total schools when it's all said and done for the degrees I have. But nothing for high school. And so with that, my parents were like, oh, you're going to start early and get done early. But I didn't know what I wanted to be for the rest of my life. So I have architecture, computer engineering, pastoral ministry, marketing, business management. Wanted to dabble in paleontology, but then at that point, my parents were like, all right, you're going to start paying for this school. Now, most of it was free before that. Mom was a professor, whatever. So I was able to just kind of fool around, but they're like, this kid is wasting so much time. You have to start paying for it. I'm like, business management. There we go. That sounds great. Generic enough because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Gonna manage some business.
And I didn't think media production was a real career. So at that time, something you just said, if you're listening to this podcast today, maybe you're entrepreneurial, maybe you have that mind like of an entrepreneur, maybe you don't. But what you just said, Soup, of, well, take a step back and evaluate what's a pain point here, what's a problem that I think I can solve. And by doing that and having that lens, then ask yourself, how much of a drain is it for you to solve that? Like I was always really good at math. I would hate being an engineer. Just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I like it. So if you're doing that task, and it's related to that, let's get rid of the job title for a second, but you're doing this task, how much of a drain is it for you to do that? Okay, so if you think you'd be fine with it, maybe you like it, okay, now you're going to get a degree with that sight in mind.
Right.
And when you're getting that degree, don't expect the school to hold your hand. Don't expect credit card companies to hold your hand and say, here's the path. No, you came in with a goal in mind and saying, this is the kind of job I want. And then throughout that time, you're looking for internships. Maybe if you have the ability to grow your own skill set outside of that, maybe you can get some side work. Maybe you can test some things. Build up your own business. And then by the time it's done, everything that you've been learning directly applies to something you've been building before you even got to college. And it's more useful skills over just an education.
I think that's it, because here's the deal. If you want to go up in any job, any career, I think the formula is actually quite simple. The thing that most people lack is the patience. to be able to go through the steps that are required. In my opinion, every job starts at the first level, which is you get a job and somebody tells you what to do. And you just execute whatever the heck they're telling you to do. Some things are more complicated than others, sure, right? But if I was to go start as a bus driver tomorrow, I'd have to be like, tell me how to turn the bus on.
Yep.
Right? And then once you start doing something, you get familiar with it. And you start noticing things. You start noticing things that you weren't necessarily asked to do. But here's the thing. You have to communicate what you're seeing to whoever's in charge of you, right? Because assumption is the lowest form of communication. And you should never assume that anybody has any clue what you're thinking. So you simply communicate, hey, here's what I'm noticing. This is what I'm seeing. Wow. Here's a couple things. And then all of a sudden, the people ahead of you start to notice that you're paying attention. And then you start to share your thoughts about those things. Here's what I think we should do.
Yep.
Hey, when this problem happens, maybe you should solve it like this instead of that, because I've seen you do it a million times.
Yeah.
And you may not be as close to the action as I am because I'm the one who's always doing, who's always doing. And all of a sudden you're going to start making recommendations. And at that point, you're going to get instant feedback. They're either going to tell you, yeah, that's a great idea, or no, that's really stupid. Go back. And then you need to check your filter. Am I seeing things correctly? Why did I make a stupid recommendation? And then restart the process. Okay, I'm seeing things. Now I'm seeing things correctly, because when I start to make recommendations that are met positively, now I know that I'm on the right track. And as my recommendations start to be met with positive feedback, all of a sudden you can start to take action. Hey, I've been seeing this and I've been telling you that we should do this, and you've been saying, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm just going to start doing it. Is that okay? You always want to confirm before action. But then you start doing things that you started, that came from your own agency. It didn't start with, hey, here's what you need to do, because that's where you started the job. You started the job with, hey, here's what you need to do. And that's how you can level up to, all of a sudden, I'm doing what I recommended that we do. It takes a long time, though. It does.
Yep. Time, experience.
The other thing, too, used to piss me off. It takes 5 years of experience to have 5 years of experience. Sorry. There isn't like a cheat code to that. So get over yourself. All right, you can go.
Soup's got specific people in mind. He's triggered now. So we need to wrap this thing up before he starts going off on these fintech
I'm not thinking about anybody.
YouTubers. But I do want to talk about next week. Like, don't let me forget this. There are YouTube finance influencers who are not CFPs, who are providing ways for teenagers to be retired by the age of 29. I really want to talk next week all about how folks are doing that, why it's probably not wise to live off of any retirement fund.
Well, I would say among other things, at the age of 29, you don't actually know what you want. Is that a true or false statement, Brodrick?
There are some who do. I'm gonna
you
push
only
back on
think you know what you want. As much as you know what you want.
I'll say it's the minority. I'm not gonna say that's too broad of a brush for me to agree with you, but you know what broad paintbrush I will use?
Go ahead.
All of our listeners, if you're checking this out, you should be hitting that subscribe button, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Spotify. We know you're listening. Thanks for doing that. But if you want to check out more, you got to be hitting that subscribe button. Otherwise, listen, we know 76% of you are going to forget about us. Somehow, some way. I thought we were pretty memorable, but somehow you're going to forget. So, hey, if you like the show, subscribe. And if you don't, well, hey, thanks for giving us 35 minutes of your time anyway. But otherwise, we're going to be back in a couple weeks to talk about what we just said, all of these financial, air quote, professional influencers on YouTube, and some of the things they're putting out there. We're gonna assess. Is it good advice? Is it bad advice? We'll let you know what we think in a couple weeks. So, Soup, thanks for joining me. Audience, everyone, thanks for being here. This is the Soup of Wall Street, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.